Look, Charles Oliveira is just like aura farming at this point. His win over Mateusz Gamrot was like just in front of his home crowd. The crowd pop. I mean, if you go to MMA fighting, you can see like a picture of Guy, like he was videoing the crowd as there was the submission, and it was just electric. Yes, he is the king of aura. May not be the king of Rio because Jose Aldo is there. But we got Alex Pereira too, who's probably the real king of Rio now. But Charles Oliveira is a bona fide superstar, especially in his hometown of Brazil. He dominated Mateusz Gamrot from pillar to post, just beat the brakes off of him. And it was absolutely crazy to see. Now, granted, Gamrot did take this on short notice, so you got to kind of give him a little bit of credit. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But what really like blew my mind was like Mateusz Gamrot, he went for the single, the head outside single, and got the takedown, and he thought he wanted the business on the ground from Charles Oliveira. Yeah, he thought so. He thought. I mean, it was just a absolute mauling from Charles Oliveira once we got to the ground. Real quick, I know you're enjoying this episode. Please drop a sub, like, comment, let me know what you think about the fights. And in the description, I've got a Discord link where we can chat, and a newsletter where you can sign up and get these directly to your inbox. It was crazy because he managed to get Gamrot into this omoplata position, and he like corralled one of the arms. You know, he's just so good from his back. It really is incredible how good Charles Oliveira is from his back. But when Gamrot thought, hey, I should go to the ground with this guy because I qualified for ADCC also, what he didn't take into account was that y'all must have forgot how good Charles Oliveira is. It was crazy, man. Like, just the way that Oliveira managed to make life miserable for him on the ground. Like, hey, this is not going to be fun for you if you want to go to the ground. And it wasn't. He might, honestly, dude, like, this title used to belong to Damian Maia. But with as complete of a fighter that Charles Oliveira is, Charles Oliveira might be the perfect MMA Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu guy there is of all time. Like, he may be the perfect MMA BJJ guy because he's always doing new stuff. He has a tool bag that is deep as it is wide. I mean, you really think about it. Like, name me a better fighter on the ground with, like, jiu-jitsu wise. Now, I get, like, the Habibs and the Islams are much better wrestlers in controlling. Oh, yeah, he lost to Islam. Yeah, I know. Get out of here, you Dagger fans. I get it. What I'm specifically talking about is how good Charles Oliveira is at submissions from a defensive posture, meaning off of his back or in bad spots. He ended up with Charles Oliveira standing on top of, or on Mateusz Gamrot's back as Mateusz Gamrot was standing. Like, the dude's incredible. He wedges himself in between the fence, you know. He's following a lot of the new tricks in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and mixed martial arts, which is a completely different sport. But he really is, like, the greatest Jiu-Jitsu of all time in the UFC, and he tied for the second or the most finishes in UFC, WEC, Strikeforce, and Pride history with Mirko Cro Cop, and he's tied for second with most wins in UFC history, right behind only the one and only Jim Miller. So, you know, he is absolutely incredible, and it's somebody that we didn't appreciate coming up, and I remember really starting to pay attention more when he started to make his lightweight return and think about, like, Damir Hasdovich, and I think that was Hasdovich. But anyway, I remember watching him come back. I was like, man, he's turned a corner here, you know, and he made his run to the title, and it was incredible. And we didn't appreciate it then, and it's a shame we didn't get to see him fight in Brazil when he was champion, because that would have been absolutely electric. He'd have sold out freaking, like, Tiger Stadium in South Baton Rouge for all I know, man. Like, he's that big of a draw down there. Now, we do got to give props to Mateusz Gamrot. He took this on short notice, like 2-3 weeks, something like that. He took it on short notice. So he didn't get a full fight camp for this, but he was game from the beginning. So remember, it was supposed to be Rafael Fiziev. So it fundamentally changes how Charles Oliveira is expecting to fight. And that plays a little bit into Mateusz Gamrot's hands. You know, he's expecting a Muay Thai guy in Rafael Fiziev, who is very good and very dangerous, and he's going to have to use his striking. And then he has to go to a guy who has a 1-2 and likes to grapple. Like, okay, well, It plays into Gamrot's hand until you watch him at the end of that first round with the body triangle cranking on it against his stomach. And Gamrot's absolutely gassed after one round of defensive grappling. I was in a jiu-jitsu tournament this weekend, and I got mauled by a wrestler the dude wrestles in college. Shout out to him. Rivero. He's a really good wrestler. Wrestles at Blue Ridge. He mauled me. Dude's way bigger than I am. He beat the brakes off of me. And that is just defending submissions is tiresome. Like, he literally submitted me in like a minute in our first match. And like, I just got to the side and I sat on the floor. I'm like, why am I so tired? It was a minute. But it was just that amount of pressure. And that's what Mateusz Gamrot had to deal with. Except it wasn't from a wrestler, or like a heavyweight wrestler. No, it was from freaking Charles Oliveira. Like, the dude is one of the best in the world at what he does. Now, the game plan obviously wasn't amazing necessarily. I'm sure Gamrot wanted to play into his strengths, and his path to victory was much better on the ground than it was standing up, because Charles Oliveira was piecing him up standing up too, but he was also piecing him up sitting down, and you know that didn't end well for him. But he really did come in with an average game plan with only 2 weeks to prepare. So, you know, like, props to him. It really does suck though, because like Mateusz Gamrot, he's 34 years old. He's likely never going to fight for the title now. And in a time where he could fight for a title and conceivably be okay, like, I don't think he beats Ilia Topuria at all. But like, he's got to win over like Arman Tsarukyan. So like, he's obviously a very good fighter, and this was years ago, so you know, Tsarukyan's better, Gamrot's older, but he's not going to fight for a title, not at 34 years old. And it's crazy because like, there's one point in time where he was kind of like the boogeyman. Nobody really wanted to fight him. He had a hard time getting fights because of how tricky he was. Like, he's not going to kill you, but he's going to make life miserable in there in the cage for you. So, you know, shout out to him for taking this. Now, after the fight, Charles Oliveira did the right thing and called out Max Holloway. You want to do that for the BMF title? I don't care. That just puts a little something extra on the line, a little something. And I like that fight a lot. The two fought way back in 2015, so it's been 10 years. And that, I haven't watched it in a long time, but it ended due to an injury. I don't remember what the injury was, but it ended due to an injury. So I really like that fight. And if you want to book that for the end of 2025, 2026, you know, great. It's going to be a different fight, though, you know, because Max Holloway's not going to, oh, I'm going to get this head outside single and take you down. Like, he's not going to want anything to do with Charles Oliveira's guard game and jiu-jitsu game. No, Max Holloway's going to go in there and say, all right, let's see what this striking's about. And both of the guys from that 2015 fight, I know the era that both of them were in, and I know what kind of they brought to the table. They are dynamically different than what they were then. So it's a different fight. You might as well call it two different fighters with the same name, because that's exactly what it is. But the question in that fight, which we'll talk about more if and when it's booked, is like, can Charles Oliveira outstrike a Max Holloway? And like, man, you look at the names who have to outstrike Max Holloway, and that's like Volkanovski and Topuria. Really, that's it. I don't know if he can, but guess what? If he can kick the legs and really kind of slow Max Holloway down in this different, slower, more methodical Max Holloway, I see it's possible. You know, I can see Charles Oliveira winning that fight. I don't count him completely out against a Max Holloway. I don't. And I think Charles Oliveira has a good game plan idea in his head for how he would beat a Max Holloway. And I hope that they book it, because that's a fight both of those guys deserve. Two legends of the sport. They both deserve it. So let's see what happens with that. Another legend of the sport, Deiveson Figueiredo. Him and Monte Jackson stunk up the joint. Absolutely terrible, guys. I mean, a horrible fight, boring, you know, and I don't blame Figueiredo as much. He's always fought like this since moving up to bantamweight, since his 3-year wars with Brandon Moreno. But it's more Monte Jackson for not wanting to engage, and that kind of blows. But look, let's be honest, Deiveson Figueiredo is 37 years old now, which is like decrepit, ancient for a bantamweight. I mean, much less a flyweight, which is what he used to fight at, what he used to be champion at even, right? Like, he is 37 years old now. He's adapted his game accordingly to his age and to the division up. Remember, like, the first fight with Joseph Benavidez, he missed weight and couldn't win the title, and he won that fight anyway, so he had to rematch with Benavidez. And making weight's always been a problem for Deiveson Figueiredo. And moving up to bantamweight was what he had to do, especially at 34, 35, however old he was when he did it. But this isn't the same Deiveson Figueiredo that we remember from flyweight. Him walking at Joseph Benavidez with his hands down and him going to absolute war with all these fast combinations like he did against Brandon Moreno. No, this is a aged and smarter Deiveson Figueiredo for sure. Monte Jackson's just way out of his league. And when I say that, I mean he's way out of Jackson's league, way up here, and Montel Jackson's like whoop, 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 right there. He's different. He's a grappling first fighter now. He likes to wrestle a lot and kind of control. We saw him do it with like Chito Vera and all them, and he failed to do so against a Petr Yan and a Corey Sandhagen. That's his 2 losses at bantamweight. It's a game plan that works for him and it gets him wins, but he's no longer the exciting fighter to be excited for going forward. And that's kind of okay. You kind of got to deal with what's given to you with your body. Like Kamaru Usman, for example, had to learn to jab. Chris Weidman failed to do so. He failed to learn how to be more defensively sound with his chin. Anderson Silva did the same thing. John Jones, Daniel Cormier, like all of these greats, they learn to do what's right and what's better as they get older and as their bodies change and as their abilities, speed, and all that change. And Deiveson Figueiredo's done that. So, kudos to him. This bantamweight run hasn't been amazing, but it's one of those runs that is like, okay, I get it. So I know why you're doing this. These guys are a lot younger and a lot faster. And you're like, Montel Jackson's way younger than Deiveson Figueiredo. So, great. Now, Montel Jackson, quick. They call him quick because he's quick to put you to sleep or something, because he is boring as it gets. I mean, he's taller than most fighters, but he doesn't know how to use his jab. Like, go back and watch the Brett Johns fight. This is the same guy, He's gone on a really good win streak and got himself ranked, but he kind of didn't deserve it. He was ranked 15th. And I guess, going on a win streak in bantamweight, you do deserve it. But, he just doesn't use his jab effectively at all. Like, it's not good one bit, and I don't really like it, honestly. He's one of those fighters that I'm gonna be okay, I'm not gonna be excited to watch him fight anymore. And when he eventually starts getting main events, like we know he will, but whatever. It's an Apex event, Now, in his post-fight interview, Deiveson Figueiredo called for Merab Dvalishvili, and after losing back-to-back fights in his last 2 to Petr Yan and Corey Sandhagen, you can't do that. You can't call for it. He has to beat somebody else. But I mean, it's done for Figueiredo also, because I think Merab just runs through him. And it would be interesting to see kind of a Figueiredo who's more reserved and doesn't gas as much, because he's more reserved and doesn't put out the crazy kind of fights that he does, especially deeper. And Merab seems like he's slowing down and being more reserved in his fight. So if Figueiredo can make him push the pace, he can realistically kind of change how that fight plays out. I don't know if he beats Merab Dvalishvili, but I do know that he does stand a fair chance. But we can't do it right now. No. Figueiredo needs 1 or 2 more wins. I like the Song Yadong fight. I think that's a logical next step for him. I don't think he's a guy that you can say, hey, let's give him the title shot right now, especially not off of a win over Montel Jackson. Song Yadong is the one to make. Those 2 guys, if they fight it out, winner can perceivably be seen as the logical next in line for Merab, who's already beat everybody else. Unless like a Pantoja wants to come up if he beats Joshua Van. That's the fight I really want, is Pantoja versus Merab. I don't even think Pantoja beats Merab, but that's neither here nor there. But yeah, at the end of the day, all I can say is, good win for Figgy. Figgy, can't you see? And he just needs another win before he gets to Merab. And Merab did tweet out I'm waiting for you, but he has to win a fight. He has to beat somebody important. And Chito Vera seemed like the important win, but they booked they had the Umar and the Sean O'Malley duo for Merab. So Figueiredo had to kind of fight Petr Yan, which he lost, and then he lost to Sandhagen, which he also if he would have won that, he probably would have had the title shot. But nope, did not get it done. Now, Joel Alvarez defeated Vicente Luque via unanimous decision, and I'm not sold on him yet. I don't know if he's a good fighter or not. You know, he's obviously very slick with his striking, but he's had takedown problems in the past, and in a division like 170, his new weight class, in a division like 170, you're going to have to run through a Shavkat Rakhmonov, a Sean Brady, or a Bilal Muhammad at some point. Even Ian Gary will like grapple with him if he has to, if he feels like he's getting outstruck on the feet. I don't think he'll outstrike Ian Gary on the feet right now, but yeah. Kind of a slow start for Yoel Alvarez, but you know, landed some really good shots and turned it up in round 2. You obviously had that eye poke incident where Vicente Luque thought he got poked in the eye, and really he just got his orbital broken probably by a legal punch. It hit kind of on the thumb right here. That's a legal punch, you know, and that's just part of the game with these MMA gloves. And that really should have been a TKO right there for Joel Alvarez. I think he deserved it. He was on a really good two fight finish streak. He finishes just about everybody he fights. Fun fighter for sure, but it should have been a TKO. That was a mistake by the referee on his part. His striking, you know, Yoel Alvarez's striking is super crisp. His combos are great. They're varied. You know, he's always throwing in something new, trying to confuse whoever he's fighting, and he does a good job of it. So I think in going like into the future, he's got some good options for him. You know, and in this fight, his takedown defense, it was good, but let's be real, like Vicente Luque, ghost of his former self, had a brain bleed. He's not been the same fighter since. He'll get a couple wins, but like this guy shouldn't be fighting, and we're sitting here allowing him to take a beating from Yoel Alvarez. And I was kind of glad that Alvarez took his foot off the gas in the third round. Third round was horrible, by the way. You know, inverted triangle position, and Luke just sat there, and Alvarez was like, I'm just going to sit on top of him. Ref should have like stood him up at that point, honestly. But it was good to see, you know, Vicente Luque not get the extra damage he doesn't need. I don't think that's good for him. And I think he needs to hang him up. Like, I used to say I don't call for fighters to retire, but I do. I call for him to retire all the time. But like, I think this was like super appropriate. Like, he needs to hang him up. His takedown defense though against Luque was okay. It was on point, and you know, he allowed Vicente Luque to get to some legs that he shouldn't have. You know, and on top he's dangerous. You know, I think, yeah, but all of his, if you go look at his record, like he's submitted some people before. He's a dangerous finisher, both striking and with submissions. But man, if you put him on his back, I just worry about him. And like, look, for example, like he was supposed to fight freaking Benoit Saint-Denis. Like, I think that's a bad fight for him. I think that's a terrible fight for Yoel Alvarez. And you know, he kind of ran to 170 and for the weight cutting, and you know, that's good. But like the wrestlers they got there are incredible. You know, Islam's the next title challenger there. You've got all these fighters, and I'm still concerned about him at 170 with all these wrestlers and his size. You know, he's super skinny. You know, if you want to get some answers from him, though, we're going to need to see him against a wrestler. Somebody who can go in there and be grindy and wrestle with him. So I'm thinking like Michael Chiesa. Michael Chiesa is a great fight for him, actually, because Chiesa's not like big, but he's tall. You know, he can match Yoel Alvarez size for size. I think that's cool. But also, you look at like a Nicholas Dalby. You know, Dalby's not the best fighter in the world by any stretch of the imagination, but he can still answer us some questions about Yoel Alvarez, and I think that's the key that we need to see before he starts to ascend these ranks and starts taking on the Bilals, the Shavkats, and the other wrestlers that are in this division. You know, the Sean Bradys and all these guys that are at the top of the division that are terrifying. Like, even like a Kamaru Usman who's still around. Like, that's another guy that could really like derail that hype train. Like Joaquin Buckley had nothing for Kamaru Usman despite being the young buck on the killing train. But yeah, you know, another cool moment from this weekend. Y'all got to put some respect on Jose Aldo's name. The UFC did the greatest thing ever and like gave him an opportunity to ring walk one more time. He obviously didn't fight on this card. Jose Aldo's retired, but giving him the opportunity in Rio, the king of Rio, in Rio, to walk out to his song, Run This Town, with a crowd going absolutely crazy. And they gave him the opportunity to lay his gloves in the ground, in the octagon, one last time in his home city. That was great. But yes, giving Jose Aldo that opportunity to lay his gloves down in Rio is the ultimate respect for what he's been. Because y'all don't understand just how great Jose Aldo was. Everybody thinks after the Conor McGregor fight, which is the biggest moment of his career, if we're being honest. But he's fought through like 4 generations of fighters. You had the WEC era. You know, in circling back for a second, like, these 4 generations, like, people forgot how great he was. Like, nobody remembers Jose Aldo flying knee Cub Swanson in 7 seconds at a title fight in WEC. Pepperidge Farm, or him beating the brakes off of, like, Matt Brown. Like, Jose Aldo doesn't have a lot of champions on his resume because he didn't allow champions. He won the title at 18 years old, you know. But, like, Jose Aldo was, like, the big acquisition. Him and Dominic Cruz were, like, the big acquisition when the UFC wanted to get the lighter weight classes, you know. Aldo was, like, the best fighter on the planet. Like, when he went into that Conor McGregor fight, like, he was the #1 fighter in the world, pound for pound king. Think like Islam Makhachev is the #1 pound for pound fighter. Ilya Chapor. That was Jose Aldo. That's how great he was. That's how dominant he was. Champion at 18 years old. And then he gets knocked out in 13 seconds by Conor McGregor. Like, his purpose was to fulfill that rise, you know. And him being so great is what made those stakes so high. And that ruined his image, you know. And then he loses to Max Holloway, which another generational talent. And then Alexander Volkanovski, another generational talent. He goes down to bantamweight. And, like, his title run at bantamweight was underrated too, you know. People sleep on Jose Aldo at bantamweight. So, you know, give him a little bit of respect. Yeah, he lost to, you know, Petr Yan and Merab. But, like, those guys are great. You know, those guys are fantastic. And, you know, credit to him because, you know, congrats on the career. Jose Aldo is one of the GOATs, and he won't get recognized as such. But the ones that know, they know, baby. They know how great Jose Aldo is. What else happened on this card, fellas? Let's go take a peek and see, huh? Let's see. Mario Pinto beat the daylights out of Johanta Diniz. Like, Pinto, man, big guy. Moved to 11-0. Really cool. You know, he's big man jiu-jitsu, so he basically locked in a Kimura, or not a Kimura, I'm sorry, an Americana key lock on Diniz. And, you know, I don't know why Diniz didn't tap, but he probably doesn't have a shoulder this morning. But he was cycling through that, the Kimura and the armbar, which is, you know, great combinations. And he, from the mount, he was in crucifix and dropping some heavy elbows, you know, what Khamzat Chimaev failed to do against Dricus du Plessis. So it was really cool to see him kind of, you know, get his shine there. Was this his UFC debut? Because I had never seen him before. No, this is his second fight. And, I mean, who doesn't beat Austin Lane? I got to go back and watch that one. This is a quick one. And a quick contender series. So, yeah, he's good, man. I like him. I'm looking forward to him. He's an interesting heavyweight, finally. Ken Ofley cheated his butt off against Ricardo Ramos. Ramos had Ofley in some bad spots, face crank and stuff, but Ofley got to, you know, back control, and eventually he used the fence to pull himself into position and got a standing rear naked choke. That was the first standing. Charles Oliveira was the second standing on somebody's back as the opponent was standing, so it was pretty cool. Michael Oswald, it ends well. With Lucas Almeida, you know, drops to 15-5, didn't have any business being in there. Almeida had a broken hand, and really just couldn't throw his right. And when you know that your guy has a broken hand, you can attack that side. Chafel Filho fought Clayton Carpenter, Kimura. Vitor Petrino caught a body with a nasty uppercut and a left hook. Made Thomas Peterson like do a worm. That was great. Bia Mosquito, everybody's real hyped on her. She's 6-0. Beat Irina Alexieva. Yeah, you know, it's a new bantamweight for you. Maybe she's good. Luis Rocha defeated Nicola. Julia Pilastri defeated Kovacevic. Kovacevic needs to hang it up. She suffered some really bad damage and, you know, almost retired, and she probably needs to. And then Luan Lacerda defeated Simon Oliveira via armbar. So overall, you know, the card was okay. You know, some fights that were designed to be exciting knockouts. Some of them didn't happen, some of them did. Oh, but it put on a good show for everybody, and I think all in all, you know, the main story is obviously Charles Oliveira. You know, Figueiredo got to fight in front of the Brazil crowd too, which is really cool because he's also a legend of the sport, a two-time champion. You know, had that quadrilogy with Brandon Moreno. So I think at the end of the day, you know, this was Charles Oliveira moment. He farmed like everybody. He mogged on him, as the kids say. You know, it was whatever the kids say. I don't know. Anyway, what I say is Fight Finders episode 8 is out. And I've already started filming episode 9, which hopefully is a historical episode. I've been wanting to get one out for you. And it's on boxing in New Orleans in the late 19th century. But this beach wrestling episode is fantastic. You guys would enjoy it because it's super like low-key, it's vibey, it's fun. And it's one of those episodes that I think is underrated as far as the first 8 episodes of Fight Finders is. So check it out, guys.